Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to Natural Health on the Deen Channel with me, Dr. Fatima Paruk. On Natural Health, we hope to keep you abreast of the new developments in health, especially when it comes to natural health, and let you know what's going on, what's available, and what's new. Today we have a very special guest, Munira Paruk, who's a Callanetics instructor. I myself had no idea what Callanetics is, but I've heard that it's a good way to exercise muscles, strengthen muscles, and tone muscles. And it's also used a lot for rehabilitation. Welcome, Munira. Thank you so much for joining us here on Deen Channel's Natural Health.
It's a pleasure being here, Fatima.
Tell us a little about Callanetics and what it entails. It's relatively new on the market.
Callanetics is more than just an exercise program. It can be classified almost as a therapy. And it's quite different from most conventional exercise programs. It was actually founded by Callan Pinkney, who in turn learned from her forerunner, Lotte Berg. Just to give you a little bit of background to Callan, she was actually born with severe scoliosis, which is a back problem, and she had backpacked throughout the world for about 10 years and further damaged her back. So she met Lotte Berg, who was a famous dancer in the 1930s, and Lotte Berg had actually taught Callan this exercise program. Callan then fine-tuned it, and she came up with DVDs and books which became quite popular at the time. This was some 25 to 30 years ago, and it was quite a success. The exercise program was then in cooperation with doctors and specialists in movement and coordination further developed, and today it's based on the most modern knowledge of anatomy.
When you say the most modern knowledge of anatomy, what exactly does it mean in terms of user-friendliness or how it differs from normal exercise regimes?
Okay, so Callanetics is a very gentle, safe, and effective form of exercise, and it works with the body according to the way the body is meant to work naturally. So Callanetics is a very slow movement in most instances. It's very precise and it has a lot of detail. And the aim is to actually mold or change the body form or posture within the boundaries set by nature.
So you're saying slow, detailed, precise. I'm thinking yoga, slow movements, very specific. In terms of the tone of the exercise, is it similar in terms of how slow the pace of yoga is? Or is it very different? Does your heart rate then get accelerated during Callanetics or not?
Okay, so it's an aerobic workout, and it has certain techniques that other exercise programs don't offer. For example, we use the three-dimensional muscle movements or the spiral muscle movements. So how Callanetics works is we isolate muscle groups and then we use repetitive movements whilst relaxing the rest of the body. And the exercises are executed three-dimensionally, which is the natural way in the truest sense of the word, as opposed to conventional two-dimensional movements. And what this means is that when you work the muscle three-dimensionally, you actually target the deepest muscle layers.
So when you say three-dimensionally, two-dimensionally, that means, if my interpretation is extension, relaxation of that same muscle, and in that extension and relaxation, you're also doing some kind of maybe twisting motion or three-dimensional. Am I getting this right?
Correct. Three-dimensional is also known as a spiral muscle movement. You see, the muscles of the body are actually arranged around the bones spirally. So we're working with the body's natural within the natural boundaries of the body to work the muscle.
You're following the anatomical shape of the body. Yes, and the way the muscles are arranged, basically. So you're supporting skeletal structure in each and every exercise.
Yes, the basis is the anatomically correct use of the body. So when you use the body, when we teach in the classes the anatomically correct use of the body, we incorporate it not just in the exercises, but we also encourage our clients to use it in their day-to-day life. And what this means is that there will be less wear and tear on your joints, on your other body parts. The likelihood of you having an operation later on in your life is also reduced. You have a lot more energy. You also have other benefits like improved posture and coordination.
Okay, when you talk about these kind of things, is it used very often for rehabilitation then, or is that its primary function, or can it be used as just a generalized exercise?
Callanetics is actually perfect for rehabilitation. It's ideal for people that have hip problems, knee problems, intervertebral disc problems, sciatica, and it's also perfect for people who have absolutely no health problems as well. And it can be used on any age group.
When you say it should be used quite often for rehabilitation, also to strengthen skeletal structure and mobility, I would say, how often does one need to engage in this kind of exercise? What's the plan?
Okay, so depending on the type of problem that you have, we have had somebody, for example, who's had a knee replacement, and she started with us at the age of 78. She also had foot problems, and she's been with us for 2 years now, and she's been attending classes twice a week. She could actually not get off the floor when she started with us, and we integrated her into the class with baby steps. We gave her alternate exercises, and she just recently celebrated her 80th birthday, and you cannot believe the person that she has become now. She's so much more stable on her feet. She has so much more balance. Even from a mental perspective, she's so much more happier. She can do things for herself just by attending Callanetics twice a week.
So it's never too late, and it is something that's attainable for people in their elderly age. You know, I find as people get older, they tend to refrain a little more from physical activity. So here's a platform for people at an older age to get involved in exercise and rehabilitate themselves, or just keep themselves healthy and keep their energy levels up, I would say.
Absolutely, Fatima. Age is not a factor with Callanetics. You definitely should not be aches and pains or joint problems or any physical problem should not be preventing you from exercising. It's even safe for pregnant women. We actually encourage Callanetics during pregnancy, provided that it's a healthy pregnancy and that you get permission from your healthcare practitioner or from your midwife, and that you're not having any problems during your pregnancy.
Is Callanetics regulated at the moment here in South Africa? How does that work?
Okay, so basically I am part of an association, the Callanetics Teachers Association of South Africa. We are an independent body, an independent body, and we are affiliated to them. There is an international organization as well, which we are not a part of. It's just the South African Callanetics Association.
And then teachers have to be registered with them?
Yes, you have to be registered with them, and you can find studios and locations and classes on our website.
How long does it take to become a Callanetics teacher, and what does that entail?
Okay, so basically it actually can take as long or as short as you it can take as long as you decide to take on it. It can take up to a year, which is how long it took me. There's a whole lot of practical classes that you need to attend. There's also a written exam with a lot of biology and anatomy involved. Then you need to do your hours as well, 100 training hours. So you'd need to be teaching classes as well. And once you've completed all of this, then you would be a fully qualified Callanetics teacher.
So it seems to be quite well regulated. How many Callanetics teachers would you say there are in the Greater Durban area?
In Durban itself, it's just myself and my colleague Desiree. There's nobody else in the Durban area.
So it is quite small, but growing at a good pace, I would say.
Yes.
How popular has it been in this last year? Has it picked up quite a bit, or has it been a bit difficult to get people to come around into Callanetics? What do you do for advertising?
Okay, so most of my advertising is actually word of mouth, because the exercise speaks for itself. I have done marketing and advertising, but I found that the ladies that actually attend my classes have themselves seen the results. They love it. They can feel the difference. They can feel the energy, the strength. It helps to build nice, long, lean looking muscles, which is especially what ladies like, as opposed to bulky muscles. Bulky muscle is also very injury prone, and it's not necessarily a healthy muscle. So the strength and the flexibility and the energy are all apparent in my ladies, and they've done most of the marketing for me.
That's really good. I'm glad that something is out there that's a little different from the norm, and as you say, focuses on each muscle's development and health overall. Bulky muscles are not strong, is what you said, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. What about children? How does this work for kids? Is it easy enough for children to do, or is it a little difficult getting them to focus on individualizing muscles as they try to exercise them?
I think children will actually manage quite well with Callanetics. It's actually very important to get them started off at a young age. The reason being is there's a lot of children are now sitting in front of TV, playing computer games. They're not running around as much. They're not playing around, jumping around, hanging from trees, walking around barefoot, and they're actually losing that feeling in your pelvic floor muscles, which is the basis for Callanetics, the activation and strengthening of the pelvic floor muscles. So this sitting environment has actually prevented the strengthening of these muscles, and they're losing it quite early on. So if we can get started with children at a younger age, it becomes a lot easier to strengthen and work these muscles.
What about children that have specific problems? I'm talking about a very specific group of kids that are born with low muscle tone for whatever reason as such. Do they tend to benefit from Callanetics, and is it easy enough for them to start this kind of training at a very young age?
Yes, children that are born with a low muscle tone can definitely benefit from this. The exercises are not difficult at all. They're quite easy once you've explained them to the client, and they will definitely manage.
You spoke about pelvic floor muscles, so my mind is racing and thinking about the benefits of pelvic floor exercises for women, post-labor, post-birth, for strengthening and removing symptoms like incontinence. Have you had any experience with this kind of thing?
Yes, we've had quite a few experiences. We've had pregnant women who have exercised with us right until they've given birth. And the advantage of strengthening the pelvic floor muscles during pregnancy is that the pelvic floor actually becomes supple, and the birthing process becomes a lot easier. Also, the recovery after giving birth, whether it's a Caesar birth or a natural birth, is a lot quicker. Also, during pregnancy, you have a lot more flexibility, a lot more energy due to strengthening the pelvic floor muscles.
And specifically for incontinence post-delivery?
Yes, pelvic floor muscles, the strengthening of the pelvic floor muscles also prevents prolapse of organs like your bladder and your uterus. It helps to strengthen the bladder, which can remove incontinence completely, provided the exercises are done regularly.
Most adults tend to suffer from lots of chronic lower back pain, neck pain as well, especially in the cervical areas, becoming an increasingly large problem. I think it has a lot to do with computerization, technology, bending over and looking at your cell phones. Have you had any great success with this kind of thing, with people in the corporate world that come to you with these types of aches and pains, as opposed to, mobility issues?
I personally come from a corporate background, and one of the problems I had was lower back ache and shoulder pain. And the strengthening of the pelvic floor, what it actually does is it lengthens the spine, and it reduces the compression in the lower back. So it releases the lower back, and so things like back ache, neck ache and shoulder ache are all reduced and eventually completely gone.
A lot of people tend to suffer from disc herniation and issues with the vertebral column, which is basically your spine. Exercise is not usually advised in this particular target group. Can Callanetics be an option for this group of people?
Yes, as I mentioned, it's like with scoliosis. We've had somebody who has actually personally had scoliosis, and she's had to have a Harrington's rod inserted into her spine, and she also had fusions inserted in some of her vertebrae in her lower back. And she's been coming to us for 12 years now, and she was not really able to do a lot when she started with us. She's attended classes 3 times a week, and she's now able to do 90% of the exercises which we've given to her. She's improved so much. She's now 56 years old, and even though she's becoming older or getting older, she's able to do so much more for herself. When she started off, she couldn't even sit on the floor and cross her legs because of the fusions in her lower back.
And through Callanetics, she improved so much.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us a little more about what an actual class would entail. How long is it for in terms of duration, and how exhausting or how difficult is it?
Okay, so an actual class is an hours long, and you can actually exercise anywhere provided you have the right equipment. But in a studio environment, we have mirrors and bars because it helps to make the exercise program a little bit more versatile. You also need a nice firm mat because most of the exercises are done on a mat. We also use physio balls, resistance bands, resistance rings, but they're not absolutely necessary to be used in the class. But when you have people that have been coming to you for years and they just want to be challenged, so then we just throw in a few different toys to make the class a little bit more exciting and challenging.
So in the 45 minutes, it's just a series of different exercises. How exhausting is it for clients?
Okay, so we work the entire body from head to toe. So as I said, we isolate muscle groups. So if we're working with the legs, for example, the inner thigh, we relax the rest of the body and we work the inner thigh intensely. And the exercise movements are executed 3-dimensionally, as I mentioned. So we work the deepest muscle layers. So not just the superficial layers, we work through to the core of the muscle, and this is what makes it quite intense. But at the same time, we work with the pelvic floor to protect areas like your lower back. A lot of people suffer from injury whilst exercising, and then due to that injury, they are unable to exercise for a while. But Callanetics is extremely gentle, it's safe and it's effective, and if it's done correctly, then the chances of you being injured are quite low.
So again, in terms of rate of exhaustion, how exhausting is it for a person that's done a Callanetics class and walking out?
Okay, so it does get your heart rate up, and you can get quite tired, but you'll find that after the class you have a lot of energy.
And I have heard people that have done the Callanetics say that a day or two after, they do suffer a little bit with muscle fatigue and soreness on a very deep level.
Yeah, especially if somebody who hasn't exercised at all has come to my class, then they'll feel pain in areas that muscles that haven't been worked for a while. So that's perfectly normal. The important thing is to be able to distinguish between a good pain and a bad pain. Obviously you don't want to be experiencing any pain in your joints, but a muscle being sore after a workout is completely normal, and it's a good sign. It shows that the muscle has actually been worked.
There are a group of people that don't exercise, and I'm referring to people that are bordering on obese or maybe already obese, that have difficulty in walking into a gym and doing exercises that are there that most people have no problem with. Because of the strain and pain involved and the extra weight that they're carrying inhibits them from doing a lot of these exercises. Would Callanetics be a good fit for this group of people?
It would actually be perfect for them. The reason being is when you strengthen the pelvic floor and you tighten the pelvic floor muscles, what you're actually doing is your pelvic floor is the floor to your upper body. So when those muscles are strong, it carries the weight of the upper body. So it actually reduces the strain on the hips and on the knees. So all of that weight that's now weighing down on your legs, on your hips, on your knees, on your ankles is now being carried by the pelvic floor muscles. So it's actually ideal for somebody who's overweight, and it also helps to take off the strain on your joints.
Yes, because I find that a lot of obese people, the biggest issue is knee health. The weight that they're carrying cannot be bared by their structural components, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because if the pelvic floor muscles are stronger and can bear that weight, it takes a lot of pressure off knees and ankles.
Correct. You need to have a strong pelvic floor to assist with that.
What other target group, in your opinion, can benefit a lot from Callanetics?
Okay, we also work with foot problems, people who have bunions, splat foot, splay foot, flat foot, and any sort of foot problems. So we work with that, because the problem with having a foot problem is that it actually has long-term effects. It goes into your knee and eventually it goes into your back, and it affects your back long-term. So if these problems can be corrected early with our exercises, it will really benefit you in the long term. We've even had a case where we've had somebody who's had a bunion, and having done the foot exercises regularly for a year, we were able to correct that. Now, most people would say you'd need to go for an operation, and there's no way of sorting out a bunion. But with our foot exercises, that can be cured completely.
Tell me a little more about whether Callanetics is covered by medical aid. How much does it cost people to come in for a session?
Unfortunately, we're not covered by medical aid, and it costs around 100 Rand for an hour to come in, which I think is real value for money, because as I said, we're working your entire body from head to toe. We even do facial and foot exercises during the class, your neck, your arms, your tummy, your buttocks, your legs. You strengthen it's an entire body workout, so it's real value for money.
And ideally, you would want somebody to come in, what, twice a week or 3 times a week?
Ideally, twice a week would be good, but if you are engaging in any other types of sports, then once a week is fine. If you're not doing any other form of exercise, then twice or thrice a week, Callanetics will really benefit you.
Is Callanetics limited to just your studio time, or are there stretches and other things to be done in between your studio time?
We do stretching during the class, so every time we work a muscle area, for example, if we work your arms and your biceps or your triceps, we then stretch that area out. So it's very important that after you've worked an area, that we stretch it out, and it's usually stretched for a minimum of 30 seconds. We hold the stretch for quite long so that the muscles don't shorten, and it's all done during the class, so you don't need to do anything once you've left.
With Callanetics, do you promote a specific diet, or are there any other requirements that one needs to fulfill before signing up for Callanetics?
I do encourage my students to eat well, because you are what you eat. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that if they exercise and continue to have bad eating habits, that they're still going to see results. But that's not true. You do need to watch what you eat. I encourage people to eat according to their blood type, because all of us are different, our bodies are different, and what may be good for one person may not necessarily be good for another person.
Mariam, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us here today in the studio. Everything you said was really interesting and very informative. It's nice to know that there are new developments happening in the world of exercises, and we hope that our viewers can also benefit from what you've just told us.
Thank you again for having me, Fatima, and I do hope that people do benefit from Callanetics.
Thanks, Mariam. We'd like to see you again soon. Thank you for joining us today on Natural Health on the Deen Channel with me, Dr. Fatima Paruk. We do hope you'll join us next week for more on natural health.